Hey, welcome to Optimize Your Body with Martin Silva, where we talk raw, uncut facts to truly help you optimize your body.
Episode 29, people, and today I'm going to be talking about predominantly saturated fat. Okay, now most of us are not really educated enough in terms of, a lot of people think saturated fat is bad. Now anything can be bad if you have too much of it, of course, but the problem is, people, is we've been brainwashed into eating the wrong kinds of foods. Now that might sound a bit far-fetched for you, but seriously, saturated fat, cholesterol, those kind of things, people still think they're going to get heart disease if they have too much cholesterol or one too many eggs and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And it's absolute bullshit, people, absolute bullshit. I'll say that again. Seriously, the issue is that most people overeat sugar, especially refined sugar, and they don't have enough fat. So most people I coach, for example, you know, if they really want to achieve good, sustainable health, I always tell them that you've got to learn more about nutrition, right? So I get them to track their calories, a lot of people, okay? So I'll get them to track their calories using an app, and I'll have a look. I'll get them to keep like a 3-day food diary, and most of them think that they're eating healthy, right? So they'll say to me on day one, you know, oh yeah, I eat really healthy, rah, rah, rah. And then I'll have a look at their 3-day food diary, and 99% of the time, I would actually say 100% of the time, they're overeating sugar, because it makes them realize then, though. It makes them more aware. It's like, wow, there's hidden sugar in everything. And you know, things like bread and pasta, people think nothing about eating those things on a regular basis. Bread and pasta nowadays, folks, for the most part, especially white, it's packed full of refined sugars and lots of other chemicals, and they're just really processed, and people don't realize what you're doing to your body when you're consuming those things on a regular basis. And then, not to mention, most people are drastically under-eating fat, okay? And that includes saturated fat. And I'll go into different types of food sources and stuff very soon. But the bottom line is, people, right, we have been lied to and completely corrupted and brainwashed, essentially, right? Now, back in 1967, there was 3 students were paid off. Okay, 3 students from Harvard University. They were paid off like $50,000 to lie about these studies, saying that sugar wasn't the culprit for heart disease, and it was fat which was causing heart disease. And now most of us are starting to realize that actually sugar's always been the devil, and fat is actually good. Again, you can overeat fat, you can overeat anything, right? And like I said, I'll go into more detail about what kinds of saturated fats you should be eating very soon. But, I mean, I just want to talk about the benefits of fat. It completely changed the game for me, folks, to be honest. I'm very passionate about this because we're facing an epidemic right now, you know, heart disease, autoimmune disease as well. You know, my mother has an autoimmune disease, unfortunately. She's had it for like 20 odd years, progressive illness. So I guess that gives me more drive to try and help people. But when it comes to the epidemic we're facing, obviously cancer is number 1 on the list. That's the number 1 killer. Now, unfortunately, most of us have been affected, or at least know someone who's been, or maybe even yourself. It's very common for someone to be affected by cancer. I don't mean to go too much into this now and go off the boil, but heart disease is just behind cancer now in terms of just killing people. You know, it's a sad state of affairs, and one of the main issues is lifestyle factors, right? So there are obviously lots of different factors which come into this in terms of people having health ailments such as heart disease, but the bottom line is, for the most part, what you put into your body is everything, right? So most people are overeating the wrong kinds of foods, refined sugars, okay, as I mentioned earlier. They're not having enough quality nutrients, whole foods, and there's lots of other things that come into it, lack of sleep, you know, lack of exercise and whatnot. But the number 1 culprit has been proven to be sugar. Okay, it's killing people, and it's killing people at an alarming rate. So let me talk more about saturated fats. Now, there are so many benefits. I could go on forever, but just to reel off a few of them, you know, cardiovascular, for example. Now, we all, like I said, in terms of the heart, we thought that fat and cholesterol and whatnot was causing the issue. It's not. Okay, so saturated fat actually plays a key role in cardiovascular health. Okay, now, there was actually studies done, and it's shown, research has shown, that when women diet, those eating the greatest percentage of total fat in their diets as saturated fat lose the most weight. Okay, so, people are struggling to lose weight and keep it off as well. I've coached thousands of people, and again, I'm very passionate about this, If people could just make these habitual changes, such as replacing the sugars with more good kinds of fats, including saturated fats, and, more fiber and vegetables and whatnot, it's a complete game changer. It really doesn't take that much to do it, folks. Also, the brain. Now, the brain's made up of mainly fat and cholesterol. That's what makes me laugh. It's like, anyway, the lion's share of the fatty acids in the brain are actually saturated fat. Actually saturated. So, a diet that skimps on healthy saturated fats will rob your brain of the raw materials it needs to function at an optimal level. Nerve signaling as well. Now, I can't speak today. Certain saturated fats, mainly the ones found in butter, lard, coconut oil, and palm oil, they act as signaling messages, which influence metabolism, including oh my God, sorry folks, bear with me, including critical jobs, like the release of insulin. So, without going too much into that, insulin's a fat storing hormone, and your body pumps it out when you eat carbohydrates and sugar. So you don't want too much of that in your body, because insulin's really important, and this is what causes diabetes. People are pumping out too much insulin into the blood. Because sugar, essentially, the way you got to look at sugar, it's going to sound a bit crazy, but sugar's poison, okay? So we need insulin to wipe that poison out of the blood. And when we're constantly releasing insulin to wipe sugar out of the blood, the body becomes insulin resistant. And then that leads to diabetes and other health ailments. Immune system as well. Now, saturated fats you find in butter and coconut oil. There's a type of acid basically in butter called myristic acid, and there's an acid in coconut oil called lauric acid, which play key roles in immune health. Okay, so the loss of saturated fats within white blood cells, right, actually improves the ability of the body to wipe out foreign invaders such as viruses, bacteria, and fungi. Hence why it helps build a strong immune system. So I don't want to bombard you with lots of different facts without cutting to the chase. Now, for example, if you look at indigenous tribes, people, right, there's certain types of indigenous tribes and living all over the world. For example, the Maasai tribe in Kenya. Now, their diet, is made up of primarily saturated fat. And all of these people have, by the way, these indigenous tribes are living proof, right, because they have a very, very, very low mortality rate when it comes to heart disease. Now, the Maasai tribe, in Kenya, their diet consists primarily of meat, milk, and cattle blood, because they eat cattle and animals. The percentage of their diet in saturated fat is 66%. Now let's look at the Eskimos in the Arctic. All they eat primarily is whale meat and blubber. So that means their diet is 75%. Saturated fat. Then you've got other tribes as well. There's a tribe in New Zealand called I can't even pronounce it, Tukili tribe or whatever, at the Atoll Islands. Again, I probably pronounced that wrong. New Zealand territory is an island. They eat mainly fish and coconuts, which turns out to be around about 60% saturated fat, their diet. And again, all of these tribes have an extremely low mortality rate, especially with heart disease, but also they don't have these chronic illnesses. It's very strange, at a very low rate anyway. And even if you look at human breast milk, which is mainly 54% saturated fat, so let's have a look at, developing infants, that's all they pretty much consume, right? So this is, without going too much into that, it's common sense. Saturated fat is very important, Now, it's carbohydrates, folks. Like I said, that is the root of the obesity and heart disease epidemic. So, the kind of foods like, I could go on forever, but let me just go through the obvious stuff, right? Even grains and stuff, folks. You don't want to be overeating grains as well, and just in general, that's a type of carbohydrate, right? So, if you restrict carbohydrates such as sugars, fructose, and grains, and try and increase the healthy fat consumption, including saturated fat. Now we look at saturated fat as some sort of unhealthy, demonized fat. It's a healthy fat. It's one type of healthy fat. Also, but it's a saturated fat. There's also healthy other fats called unsaturated fats. Now I'll come to that in a minute. But like, for example, rubbish food like grain-based desserts, you know, cakes, cookies, donuts, those kind of things, even like granola bars and crisps. Avoid these kind of things, minimize them, you know, yeast-based breads as well, which most of us eat. If you're going to eat bread, folks, try and have sourdough. I get good results with that with clients and with myself in terms of, you know, they don't get the bloating and stuff like that, which a lot of people do get from bread, but also they just get more energy and they can tend to digest because it's fermented, right? So it's good for the gut generally if you can get good quality stuff. But yeah, like soda and energy drinks, obviously stuff like pizza, dairy desserts, you know, pasta dishes, alcohol, all these kind of things, right, are just examples of like refined sugars. Now let's look at the different types of fats, people, right? Let's cut to the chase here, because you know I tend to go off on one. Saturated fats from like animal fat and tropical oils. Okay, so let's look at like butter. Okay, now I've been consuming more butter lately, as long as you're not dairy intolerant. But to be honest, I don't eat dairy, but butter hasn't got a great deal of lactose in it, which is normally the is the lactose, which is the kind of sugar which gives people, you know, the allergic reactions and whatnot. So butter, I find, is not too bad. But make sure you get butter which is made from raw, grass-fed organic milk, if you can, okay? Good quality butter. And coconuts and coconut oil, as I mentioned, they contain certain types of acid which are really, really important for the immune system, but also for suppressing appetite and sustained energy and whatnot. Also, egg yolks. Okay, eat eggs, peeps. Eat eggs. Again, as long as you're not allergic to eggs, because, but the thing is, folks, it's normally the egg whites, which is toxic. Okay, there's a toxin in egg whites called avalin, which gives people, an immunogenic reaction a lot of the time. So if you just, egg yolks are actually the part which is packed full of nutrients, which is the funny thing. Again, cholesterol and saturated fat is really bad. Avoid eggs. Absolute bullshit. We've been lied to and corrupted, people. So eat eggs, eat the yolk. You're going to get the saturated fat in there and also the cholesterol, which is great. Obviously, you can overeat them, but it's quite hard to overeat fats, folks, right? I mean, sugar you can bloody eat all day long because they're engineered. Certain types of sugars and processed foods are engineered to make us eat the fuck out of them, right? Because I've faced it myself, you know. It's a battle when you start eating sugar. It's hard to stop. But fats and vegetables and stuff, trust me, you're going to find it a little bit harder to overeat them, especially saturated fat. But yeah, so grass-fed meats as well. Get your steaks in, folks. Get your steaks in. And other types of fats, the monounsaturated, you know, olives and olive oil, raw nuts such as almonds, pecans, walnuts, those kind of things, and unheated organic nut oils. Now, what I mean by that is olive oil. Generally, I know that's not a nut, but olive oil, you want to not heat it. If you heat it, it tends to turn into a bad fat, so just try not to heat it up too much. But butter is okay, because that kind of stabilizes more, I think. So, I kind of know that. So, yeah, basically saturated fats such as coconut oil and butter are going to be better off for cooking in. So, yeah, olive oil is okay, but just don't heat it up too high. But the kind of oils, the thing is now, most people, in terms of fats, and saturated fats, most of us, most people do overeat omega-3 fats, which you find you want to avoid these, folks, basically. These kind of oils that people, like vegetable oils, that most of the crappy foods when we go and eat out and the foods we like to eat, basically, fried foods and stuff, are normally fried in the wrong kind of oils, which pump our blood full of omega-3s. You know, oils such as corn oil, soy oil, canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil. These kind of things you want to avoid, peeps, because most of us have the wrong ratio of omega-3 and omega-6 fats. So when you eat those kind of oils, you're going to overeat omega-6. And what they find is the ideal ratio from omega-3 to omega-6 is 1:1. So you should eat roughly the same of each. But the typical American diet, for example, is 1:20 in ratio. So people are having like 20 times the amount of omega-3 from all these crappy oils and processed foods than they are omega-3s. If I said that right, omega-6, sorry. They're having way too much omega-6. So the other kind of fats you want to avoid, sorry folks, I was meant to just talk about saturated fats, but sod it, I'll just talk about, it is mainly saturated fats. But anyway, the other fats you want to avoid are trans fats. Now, trans fats are formed when hydrogen is added to vegetable oil during the food processing process, if that makes sense, known as hydrogenation. Okay, so basically, trans fats are an absolute nightmare. You do not want to be eating them, or at least basically significantly reduce the amount of trans fat you eat. Okay, so again, when we cook up these vegetable oils, they turn into a type of trans fats, but folks, eat grass-fed butter, eat full-fat butter. And this is, if you look at the epidemic we're in now, it's crazy, isn't it? Because most of you can relate to this. We've been told to eat bloody margarine. Oh my God. And these are the kind of, for years and years, people have been told to eat these kind of foods and avoid butter and saturated fats. And surely it's playing a massive part, in the state of health we're in right now and the epidemic we're facing, because margarine's really bad. That's what contains the trans fats and the hydrogenated fats to replace the saturated fats. So we need the saturated fats, folks. We need it for our heart, for our lungs, for our hormones, for our bones to assimilate calcium. So yeah, eat those kind of fats, folks, right? Grass-fed meats. Get your eggs in, get your egg yolks in, get your butter in, get your coconut oil and your coconut products. Like, I eat coconut yogurt. Okay, yes, there's going to be a lot of calories and fats, but you know what? They're going to be better for satiety. They're going to fill you up more instead of eating the bread, pasta, cereals, those kind of things. Avoid them and switch over to having those kind of fats. Obviously, avocados, I mentioned before. It's a great type of monounsaturated fat. Avocados. So yeah, and obviously you need to get in the fish as well for the polyunsaturated fats, omega-3s. So you've got to get the ocean fish in, folks. At least a few times a week. Try and get in good quality, if you can, wild salmon and sardines, and what's the other one? Mackerel. Those are the three I tend to eat. Tuna is good as well. Just don't overeat tuna because it's more toxic with mercury and whatnot. Anyway, I've covered a lot of this in previous episodes. But yeah, that's the kind of healthy fats you want to stick to, folks. There's a lot more which I could go into. However, I don't want to snow you under with information, right? So keep it simple. Let me just give you an example of the way I eat now, right? And if your goal is to lose body fat, great, because it's gonna get you on the right tracks. If your goal is to build muscle, great, because you know what? Saturated fat and cholesterol, game changers when it comes to producing hormones, testosterone and whatnot. And I notice massive strength gains. I notice a big difference in libido when I have more cholesterol as well, like egg yolks and animal offal, such as chicken liver. I love lamb liver, but I don't have it. I haven't had it for a while, but I do make a point of sometimes once or twice a week having some animal offal. Yeah, so really, really good. But for an example, I do a lot of intermittent fasting, so I don't start eating until about 11, 12, and I finish eating at like 8 p.m., so I eat within an 8-hour window. I feel good when I do that, but for example, breakfast, when I do have it, I'll have some, rather than having your cereal, your bread, your pasta, don't do it, folks. Switch it over, seriously. Switch it over, get yourself some good quality nutrients in, okay? So, for example, like a nice salmon fillet. Now obviously it's better if you can steam the salmon or steam salmon, but you can fry it, it's still fine. Fry it in coconut oil, add some mushrooms or whatever. You want to add some onions if you want to add some more flavor. Have that with like half an avocado. Get your greens in as well, get some leafy greens in. Maybe even fry an egg if you want to as well. Now it's a lot of calories, but guess what? It's going to fill you up. Add some cider vinegar as well, which is good for suppressing your appetite and also really nutritious. That's just an example of the kind of breakfast I have. Now, you might think that's a bit weird, might be a bit drastic, but if it is, how about just having an omelette? Just getting some eggs in. Have some eggs for breakfast. Keep it really, really simple. And yeah, just include the olive oil to your meals, one of your meals in the day. Get the avocado in. Like I said, just try and avoid the refined sugars, bread, pasta, cereals, processed foods, and just include more fats, as I mentioned, and more fiber from the vegetables, and obviously have some fruit as well. Fruit is going to have more fiber gram for gram than any other food, really. So, but again, this is packed full of fructose, sugar, in lots of different types of fruit. So, I'm going off on one a bit here, but I always say to the clients, berries are the best, really, if you're going to eat fruit. Get the berries in because lowest amount of calories and sugar and the highest amount of antioxidants. So, yeah, pack in the berries, So, that's pretty much it, really. But yeah, whether or not if your goal is to build muscle, then you need to get a sufficient amount of fat in anyway. But if your goal is to lose weight, what works really well is actually on the days you're not training a great deal, try and have really low carbohydrate days where you have lots more fat, like I mentioned with the food, and like I said, less sugar, less carbs. And on the days you do train, so the days you do your big sessions, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, increase your carb intake then. So it's carb cycling, it's called. Works really well for fat loss, for energy, for everything, really. I get great results for that. So on the days you do train, include more carbohydrates, so maybe reduce the fat a little bit. But try and stick to the high fiber, high polyphenol carbohydrates. Polyphenols are powerful antioxidant, which you find in fruit and vegetables and stuff. So try and have those kind of carbohydrates. But yeah, include maybe some sweet potatoes, some quinoa, some rice or whatever. Have more fruit on those days. And yeah, even if you're going to have fruit, maybe have some dates packed full of sugar. But on those days, if you're going to treat yourself, have a little bit more, have a little bit more sugar, such as dates and fruit and stuff if you want to. So yeah, I know it sounds a bit like, it might for some people be, really? Like fruit's a treat? But I'm not saying use fruit as a treat, but, have more of those kind of foods on the days you're doing your big training sessions. Just remember, folks, like I said, we're facing an epidemic here now, and it's starting to unfold, we're the sickest we've ever been as on a global level. Certain countries are worse than others, but trust me now, the information I'm giving you, is very, very simple to make these changes, and a little bit of consistency, a little bit of discipline. Don't get me wrong, I refine sugar every now and then. Okay, I try to avoid it. I still eat processed foods from time to time. It's just being mindful, people, right? Just being mindful. And it turns out, it turns out 100 years ago, people, right? Put it this way, 100 years ago, it was almost unheard of. It was unknown, coronary heart disease, unknown. Okay, and nowadays, all of a sudden now, we're at the worst state we've ever been. So, in fact, it turns out the people who have the highest percentage of saturated fat in their diets have the lowest risk of heart disease. But as I say, when it comes to weight management and looking good, which I'm sure a lot of you would like to look good naked, and I'm sure a lot of you already do look good naked. I know this sounds quite vain, but a lot of you will be listening to this mainly for health reasons, but a lot of people listen to it primarily to look good. I know we want both, but a lot of people have looking good as a priority, which is perfectly fine. But obviously it's a lot better when you start prioritizing your health. And when you start doing that, your body will look a lot better as a side effect. But, we all want to look good naked. Like I said, I bet a lot of you do look good naked. I'm not taking that away from you. But when you eat more saturated fats and include a wider range of fats and reduce sugar, have a little bit more veg, do those simple things, folks, and absolute game changer. You'll start losing body fat, lift weights regular as well. Keep it simple, folks. Walk, move enough. And that's it, really. Do those things consistently, and not even 100% of the time. Most of the time, just try and do those things and just watch what happens. It'll be transformative. Okay? I hope I have helped a lot of you and dropped some good gems there. I always feel like, today didn't feel like my day, really. I felt like I was talking a lot of crud, but I'm sure I got some good information in there for you. Okay? So, you're probably missing out on my newsletter, by the way, so you should send me your email address. Basically just, email me your email address saying you want to get my newsletter, martinsilva@hotmail.co.uk. Drop me an email, I'll add you to my list, and I'll send you out free content each week. Also, if you give me a 5-star rating and review, folks, on iTunes, it'd be a massive, massive help. Okay, I need to get more of them in the bag, so if you could, that would be amazing. And thank you very, very much for chiming in, or tuning in, should I say. Thank you very much, folks, and peace.